A State of Grind, brought to you from the city of Detroit, the place to have our community's most open-minded, creative, and dedicated people come together to redefine the word elite.
In our show, we'll be connecting community members whose insight and actions serve to embody the epitome of our society.
With each guest, we seek to learn, to build, and to further serve our community with our newfound knowledge.
We also work to elevate these individuals as we listen to their stories, perspectives, and their projects.
Today, we'll be talking with Timothy Paul Jackson and Nicole Lindsey, co-founders of Detroit Hives, an organization that focuses on transforming vacant lots into sustainable urban bee farms, both beekeepers and fellow Detroiters. This week, we'll be learning about them and their most recent endeavors with Detroit Hives.
So grab a seat, let's grind up some coffee, and enter the ultimate state of mind. This is A State of Grind.
So welcome guys, welcome to A State of Grind. Happy to have you guys part of our second show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah.
So Nicole, congrats on your award, most recent award. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so recently I was nominated for Crane's Detroit 2022 Notable Sustainable Leaders Award. So what that does is Crane is highlighting leaders throughout the city who are doing sustainable things within their business, companies, or within their organizations for the city of Detroit. So it was great to be honored and nominated and awarded that award. So for the things that we're doing within the city of Detroit with Detroit Hives.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
In with that, so we kind of read an article from Crane's because it was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It said that you spoke at the American Beekeeping Federation. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and I guess how you got asked to speak at this event?
Yeah, so American Beekeeping Federation is a larger beekeeping group. So it's a beekeeping group where people come from all across America, and we do. They have a conference every year.
Yep, and it's the largest annual conference every year.
Mm-hmm.
The largest beekeeping conference.
Yep. So we were we're invited to come out and speak. So we're in a niche area when it comes to beekeeping. We're in an urban area, so a lot of people don't think of beekeeping in urban cities. So it was a chance for people to learn about what we're doing in Detroit, especially like in the city of Detroit. People don't see beekeeping being done there. But having us come to speak and tell our practices and what we're doing within the city of Detroit as far as beekeeping.
Why Detroit is the place to be,
Yep.
and how our mission both impacts or benefits both people and pollinators.
Very nice.
So at this event, you probably got to talk to other people who do similar to beekeeping activities to what you guys are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to other urban, bee farms or initiatives, how would you compare Detroit to other cities across maybe the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Many are very similar in a way, but I would say Detroit has a very unique approach when it comes to where to place hives. And what we have is abundance of vacant lots, the green space, whereas in other cities like New York, you have a lot of rooftops. So many beekeepers or gardeners are finding ways to create urban gardens on top of rooftops or on balconies, and they're hosting hives on top of rooftops as well. They have so much rooftops they can place hives there, whereas here, our abundance is green space, urban gardens, and etc. So that's one way how we may differ from other cities, but in all, there's still an abundance of diversity, but also a lack of chemicals in most cities opposed to rural areas. You have more monocultures in rural areas than you have here or in urban areas.
Yeah, so with like cities of Detroit, because we have so many vacant lots, we're able to have a diversity of plants and habitats Detroit is actually boosting native bee populations. So,
in fact, Detroit has the highest bumblebee population. And that's been a study that's been conducted by the University of Michigan, a research study. Mm-hmm. So it's really good to have that. Bumblebees are native bees, and they definitely contribute to, the food systems here as well. They're very important.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I love congratulations again. I love that we're getting right into it. But for the people that don't know, can you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and the roots of Detroit Hives and the work that has led up to this award?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I did things off. So yeah, Detroit native. Yeah, this is Tim Paul Jackson here. I'm a Detroit native, born and raised here in the Motor City. Attended Mumford High School, Wayne State University. Originally, I'm a creative. I like to create things that don't exist. I like to paint, draw, anything that involves using thoughts to visualize those thoughts into reality. I love doing anything in that space. I'm passionate about nature. I'm passionate about giving back, and I just love the Motor City.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Detroit. Grew up on the west side. I attended Oakland University where I have a degree in psychology. So I don't have a background in any of entomology or dealing with nature. So, and I was never really outdoorsy. So being in this space is definitely a new perspective for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So are you also Northwest or just what part of Detroit? You said Northwest, right, Tim?
Yeah, I'm from the Northwest. I
Near
grew up
Brightmoor?
off the Lodge and 8 Mile area.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up near Brightmoor.
Brightmoor? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
So what's your history like? You know, are you the first generation to be focusing on beehives, or how did that
How did that come
be?
about? Yeah.
Yeah, for the last 5 years, you know, I thought I was the very first generation or first generational beekeeper in my family. And boy, was I wrong. As I began to do a little bit more research, I discovered that my great-grandfather was also a beekeeper, and he kept bees in Greenville, South Carolina. And that was amazing to hear that you know, there's nothing new underneath the sun. You know, energy is never created, nor is it destroyed. So all the things that we come in contact with life is nothing new. It's just that sometimes we have to, you know, reconnect back to the earth and reconnect back to our ancestors and remember who we are.
So how'd you get into beekeeping? How did that come to be?
Oh man, I like that you can use it as a bee pun. How did that come to be? So
There it is.
just like Nicole mentioned, we were never really outdoorsy people, and this is because maybe the way we grew up. You know, you had a lot of things on TV, you had television, you had technology, and then also all around us, sometimes bugs or insects were portrayed or labeled as pests. So whenever we see bugs or bees or things like that, we were trained to not want to invite them into our world, our community, our environment, or our backyard. So how I got into bees is a very long story. It's a flowering, blossoming story. But I would say it all started with dealing with depression. Dealing with a lot of stuff that was going on in my family, from medical malpractices. Found myself to questioning the what is. A good friend of mine had me come across a book called Think and Grow Rich. And I began to read this book, and I learned that a lot of things that was coming to my life, I kind of attracted myself. And I wanted to find a way to be more grateful. I wanted to find a way to be more happier and positive. And one thing that I came across was the power of sun gazing. And sun gazing is an effect where you literally just stare at the sun during the safe zones of the sun, rays of the sun. It's early in the morning when it's rising or when it's setting. And when you stare at the sun, you're absorbing all the vitamins, and it makes you more grateful, more happier, and it just really makes you a more positive person. Then we came across what's called grounding. And grounding is where you literally take off your shoes and allow your feet to stand on a sun-charged ground, whether it's sand, grass, soil, or dirt. And this also makes you more happier and more bright and grateful. So Nicole and I found ourselves rushing in the morning to go sun gaze, or when she get off work, we would rush and go sun gaze before the sun sets. And this allows us to be more happier. So around the summer of 2016, we came across an article where the city of Detroit were looking for residents like ourselves, nonprofit organizations, block clubs, etc., anybody to buy back many of the vacant lots they had in our city. See, at the time, Detroit didn't have a budget to tend to those vacant lots. They didn't have a budget to place new homes, new businesses in some of these communities. So they were looking for residents to buy back these vacant lots in hopes to eliminate crime, issues in the community, or really rebuild these neighborhoods. And at the raw, the vacant lots were going for as low as $100. We figured we can do something. And this is because of all the many hours of sun gazing and grounding. We began to be more peaceful, more grateful, more happier, and actually more optimistic when we looked at issues and problems. We no longer saw them as a nuisance. We no longer saw vacant lots as an issue, but we saw these as an opportunity to do something positive. And after all, around this time, there were so much great things happening in downtown Detroit and in the Midtown area. We felt like our inner city communities were being left out or wasn't really getting the same attention. We figured when people traveled to Detroit, they went directly straight downtown or Midtown area, and they were very, reluctant to visit other parts of Detroit or less to visit the community. And we wanted to find a way. How do you change the narrative of that? How do you find a way to change the narrative that have people visit the inner city communities, and then also change the narrative of what people thought about the people that resided within inner city communities? But we knew in order to change that, we had to do something different. We had to do something innovative, creative, game-changing, or what people may think ridiculous. So we thought about tons of ideas. What can we do to galvanize folk? What can we do to attract investors or tourists or rebuild a community? Our original thoughts were to transform a vacant lot into a peacock farm. We figured we can purchase a peacock for, $150, which is relatively inexpensive.
That's it.
Okay. And they're very low maintenance, and they overwinter very well. The only issue with peacocks is that they can be quite noisy. But we figured in some of these communities that we reside in that there's blocks and blocks of vacancy. So it can support maybe a project like a peacock farm. In addition to that, we thought about an outdoor photography studio, in which I still would love to complete, which would be an inclusive space for the community, but also for photographers. And this particular space will provide natural light setup. So there'll be soft boxes that support natural light. It'll be a set design for every for every season. So for every season, there will be a natural set design, whether it be spring flowers, a summer setup, maybe having the leaves be a particular set design. And then, of course, during the winter, there'll be a set design. So every season, this particular site is open all year round. Then we thought about an urban campsite, a place for, like ourselves, nature-deprived humans can sun gaze, they can ground, they can probably just get away from what maybe going inside their household or what's going inside or going on their job. This is a place where they can kind of vent, or a place where they can just be around in nature without having to go 30 minutes or 40 minutes outside the city. Then lastly, we thought about an urban campsite. An urban garden. Of course, this has been done before, but once again, it supports the initiative and provide local food initiatives and addressing, food security. All these were great ideas. We had them on our vision board. We will look at them every day, but we'll go back to our day-to-day operations, and we really didn't act on any of these ideas. As time progressed, as we began to enter December of 2016, I had this really bad cough and cold that I could not get rid of, and I tried everything from A to Z to get rid of this cough and cold. Nothing was working. I tried over-the-counter medication, and my very last result was to go to the doctor. I was very reluctant to go to a doctor, only because of my past history with my family passing away due to all medical malpractices. So I really didn't want to go to a doctor. However, my girlfriend at the time, now my fiance, Nicole, was concerned with my health because she didn't know if I had pneumonia. My cough and cold was lasting for over 2 months, and she said, "You need to go see what's going on with you," because I never really get sick. So for me to get sick for over 2 months was something was not right. So I went to the doctor, didn't have any answers for me. They placed me on antibiotics, but I was still dealing with my cough and cold. So still having this cough and cold, still taking antibiotics, and nothing was working for me. I will frequently go to this store that's not too far from where I do a lot of our advertising work. It's in Ferndale, Michigan. It's called the 9 Mile and Hilton Market. And I'll always go to this store, still while having this cough and cold, and probably get some snacks. And I know I shouldn't be getting snacks with this cough and cold, but one particular day I go into the store, and I'm coughing so bad that the store owner recognized it. And he said, "Young man, you should try some of our local raw honey that we have here. it can help with that cough that you're experiencing. As soon as he said that, I laughed. I'm like, man, get out of here. That ain't gonna work. I'm gonna try X, Y, and Z. That ain't gonna do it. He said, no, this isn't like most honey that you can find in the store. Our honey is local, it's raw, and I buy it directly from a beekeeper. And I just simply asked him, what's so special about local raw honey? I never heard those words paired together. I just thought all honey was honey. He said, what's so special about local raw honey is that honeybees within your local region, they pollinate flowers, herbs, dandelions, things like that, and they bring that back and they make honey out of it, and it helps alleviate your allergies. And then I stopped them right there. I said, honeybees visit dandelions? I didn't know honeybees visit dandelions. I just thought a dandelion was a pesky weed that you sprayed. Sure. And they gave me this very long rundown on how it's the herbs that's medicinal. The honeybees visit those herbs, the blossoms of fruit trees that's highly medicinal. And the nectar and the pollen from those flowers can help heal you from many elements. So he sold me on that concept. Because I really didn't know how honey was made. I really didn't know how honey was produced. I just thought it was bee stuff. I didn't know it came from plants in a way. And I'm a little ashamed to say that, but now, as they educated me on all of that, I began to be more intrigued, and he sold me on the product. So from there, I began to just take the honey 3 times a day. And over the 3rd week, it got rid of my cough and cold. From there, just to be inquisitive, I just wanted to learn more about local raw honey. And I discovered so many benefits for local raw honey that if you're pre-diabetic or you're dealing with diabetes, it can serve as a safe substitute opposed to sugar or high fructose corn syrup, in which our community is flooded with those harmful sugars. Around our communities, we see tons of food that may be laced with high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, our chewing gum, and then you also have processed sugars everywhere. So I want to find a way to reverse that. I want to find a way to provide a natural health alternative for myself. So I just simply began consuming local raw honey. From there, I began to learn about how bees make this precious product, which is very industrious. Nicole began to see my interest in my fascinating, kind of a nerd interest in learning about bees. She said, how about we transform a vacant lot into a bee farm?
Let's do it.
Boom!
Let's do it.
That's where the ridiculous idea is ridiculous it sounded, knowing that we didn't have any background in bees, knowing that we don't know where to start, we don't have anyone to call on. I said, let's do it because it's something new. It's an opportunity for us to get over our fears, and it's a way we can change the narrative of what people think about the city of Detroit, particularly also the communities of Detroit, because you would not only pair urban beekeeping with vacant lots. So we wanted to find a way to really change the name or change the narrative of what people think about vacant lots, people of Detroit, the city of Detroit, all of that.
Yeah.
All of that.
They don't change that whole narrative of
vacant lots are now
that they had about Detroit.
So now when people think about a vacant lot, their idea, their perception is opportunities now. They no longer see it as a nuisance. They now see it as, I want to put something here. I want to put something there. But back in the day, people saw it as a nuisance. They saw it as an expense. They saw it as something they had to pay property taxes on. They saw it as a dumping site. A dumping site. They didn't want vacant lots in the community, but now it's being embraced.
Yeah, you're talking about the history, like the past history of how people looked at bees beforehand. Yeah. So with the history, actually, to that, like, how were there bees before, before you guys started Detroit Hives in the city of Detroit? Did you guys know of anybody?
Oh, well, to answer your first question, bees have been around for over hundreds of millions of years, actually over 400 millions of years. Now, here in the city of Detroit or in the state of Michigan, we have what's called native bees, just like you have native tribes, native flowers. There are so many tribes of bees that are out there. When I mean by tribes, I'm talking about species. I'm talking about minor bees, orchard bees, cuckoo bees, bumblebees, mason bees,
leafcutter bees.
The list goes on. There's so many native bees that exist. Now, honeybees, they are not native to this region. The European honeybee is not native to this region. It originates from Africa, and they've been able to create a hybrid of the honeybee, which traveled to Asia, then from Asia to Europe, and we received the European honeybee here in Jamestown, Virginia, of the year 1622, and then by the year 1776, they found a way. Those European honeybees found a way to swarm here in Michigan. Now, since then, there have been beekeepers in Michigan, but it was more so on a rural standpoint. There was definitely some urban beekeepers as well, but it was more so a don't ask, don't tell. Most people didn't talk about or made it more of a community thing. It was more so just for honey or cross-pollination services. So upon learning about beekeeping or seeking courses in beekeeping, we didn't think there were people keeping bees here in Detroit. We thought we were the first ones that wanted to keep bees here in the city of Detroit. And boy, were we wrong. Our first step was, we didn't know where to take courses. So we contacted the Southeastern Michigan Beekeepers Association. And we expressed our interest in taking courses. At that time, all the courses were completely filled. So he recommended us to 2 courses that were closer to where we live. One was in Royal Oak, Michigan, in which we were surprised there was even a course in Royal Oak. It was called Green Toe Gardens. And then another course was in Detroit, Michigan, called Sweet on Detroit called Sweet on Detroit under the Keep Growing Detroit program. And that's where we began to meet other beekeepers. And like I said, it was more so a don't ask, don't tell. It was like a secret type of thing because most people, when you mention bees, they really wouldn't want to have that in their community. So it was a don't ask, don't tell type of thing.
Okay, I got you. So in regards to, let me just back up real quick, because when you mentioned about one of your main reasons to why, aside, from you getting sick, because all these reasons are very personal, which is, I think it drives that connection to be able to start something that drives an entire movement in a city, right? So in regards to sun gazing, people don't realize the power of how effective sunlight at first, when you first wake up. I've heard, I've read the earlier you get in some sunlight, the better for your health as well as for your eyesight. I don't know if you guys have heard of Huberman Labs podcast, but that's pretty much where it definitely comes into fray from a scientific perspective. But all this time, the last 2 years with Detroit Hives, how did the pandemic affect the whole, operations of the organization?
It's been bittersweet, I would say. It's been bittersweet. So, as you know, with the pandemic, most people were indoors. Most factories were shut down. Most people weren't driving. So with that in mind, the environment took a break.
Got a chance to rest.
It got a chance to rest. We started to see more wildflowers. Then less people were mowing their lawns because they weren't, going outside. They were afraid to just step outside. So you started to see more dandelions, more wildflowers, more insects. And there was also a report that there were definitely more insects flying around in 2020 than ever before. And this is because of that, because there was less people outside, less factories being ran, less car pollution. So the environment took a break. So with that in mind, our bees were doing really well. Insects were doing really well. The environment was doing really well. We also took a break with self-care. There's so much going on. That was the best time for us to really, evaluate our health and to focus on ourselves as well. But also, it was a call to action. There was so much going on. Many people were in a very, they were looking for ways to seek help. And we wanted to find a way, how do we tie in what we're doing with bees into what's going on right now or what's going on during the pandemic? So what we did was we created what's called Bee Well Care Packages. And this is a great way that we still find a way to educate others on bee conservation and raise awareness during a pandemic with so much going on. And what Bee Well Care Packages were it's just basic essentials to provide COVID relief. But not just basic essentials, it was essentials that were needed to provide those relief, whether it's local raw honey. And what's great about local raw honey is that it provides support for your immune system, opposed to, once again, sugar and any other thing that can cause your body to compromise your immune system. In addition to local raw honey, we provided beeswax candles. And what's great with beeswax candles is that it removes all the negative ions from the air. And it also provides respiratory therapy, which is really great to have around, what's been going on with the pandemic. Alongside from that, we was able to support local businesses, particularly solo sliders. And we work with them to provide meals to our frontline responders, healthcare workers, and local heroes. In addition to that, we deliver over 300 of those Be Well Care
And we
packages.
also have face masks too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So we
Can't
also
get
in
about
those packages we also had reusable face masks. So my mom, we highlighted her business and Maymay's masks, and those were also in the care packages as well.
And the reason why we were with Maymay's masks is because for some people it was hard to find face masks.
Mm-hmm.
So people had to get creative. They had to make or create their own mask. And that's where Nicole's mom, she's already had a gift of sewing. She's been doing this for many times. And she said, you know what, I can make a mask. I can just make some masks. So she already made us masks to wear to protect ourselves. Then as the time came to do Be Well Care packages, it was like, hey, she know how to make masks. Masks are kind of hard to find in stores now. Let's make some masks. Let's create some economic opportunities, economic mobility. And we were able to circulate that money right back in the community and those opportunities. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess that kind of transitions us into a little bit more about your guys' organization. So what, I guess for anyone who doesn't really know, what is Detroit Hives?
Right. So Detroit Hives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We work to improve underserved communities for both people and pollinators. And we do this by transforming vacant lots into educational apiaries or bee farms. But in addition to that, we also collaborate with universities, community organizations, local businesses to either host hives or to introduce honeybee colonies or to support native bee colonies right here in the city of Detroit and southeastern Michigan.
That's awesome. So how did this organization come to? I know you kind of gave us your background on how you got involved with beekeeping, but when did you decide to make it an organization? And I guess when you break it down into what's your mission, what's your guys' drive, what kind of pushes that organization towards what you guys wanted to do?
Right. I think it all stemmed from there was a gap missing in our community, a gap for local raw honey. There was nowhere to find local raw honey. In addition to that, there was so many vacant lots in our city. Of course, we can do this as an individual, but this vision was much larger than ours. We just didn't see just transferring one space and provide local raw honey for ourselves. We wanted to find a way, how do we do this to benefit more people? And we know we can do it for a profit, but we wanted to have a social good to it. So that's where we thought it would be great to make it a nonprofit.
And then we also, especially educating youth as well. So,
Yeah.
Growing up, we never had anybody educate us about the importance of bees or the environment. So we wanted to educate a lot of youth on the importance of bee conservation. So.
Because it's so much to that.
Yeah.
We were so excited to learn about bees that we couldn't keep it to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we did something different. We would invite people to our bee farms to share our passion with them, because you couldn't go nowhere in the city of Detroit at the time to learn about bees. There was nowhere you can just, I want to just go check out some bees.
Yeah.
You know, so this kind of education wasn't really being taught when I was growing up, nor to our peers or our generation.
Yeah.
So we wanted to find a way to change the narrative. But this is all fueled by passion. We were just passionate about learning, and we just couldn't keep it to ourselves.
We wanted to tell everybody.
So beekeeping more so turned into a community engagement tool. And we found a way, it's not just about keeping bees. It's about people and pollinators, because people, when you hear about bees, like, oh, I don't want nothing to do with that. But those are just misconceptions of what people think are bees. Those are actually wasps. So when you educate communities about the difference between bees and wasps, their characteristics, but how they still, create an ecological balance and how they still important to our environment, they're less likely to have those fears or misconceptions.
Yeah, you break that stigma that you had mentioned earlier in regards to the history, where people would only keep it in private.
Oh yeah.
People would only, keep it on the don't ask, don't tell kind of deal. So it's great that an organization like Detroit Hives can come up and take care of trying to educate striving to educate the youth, so then the future generations can continue, because bees are vital to the ecosystem, right? You mentioned earlier, along with your personal story, the honey properties are tremendous.
But I gotta stop you on that one.
Oh, go ahead.
Not just bees,
Absolutely.
all living things.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
bees
like
have been our gateway bug to learning about other insects and their importance, and how every living thing on this earth plays a viable part within our livelihood. So
all living things,
interconnected. Yeah.
Water, air, soil, roly-polies, ants,
Right.
wind, everything.
Yeah.
The tiniest little things that creep upon this earth.
They all work together. Without great soil, without water or sunlight, a plant can't grow.
Yeah.
Now, a bee or a honeybee can't visit that plant. So we all work together.
Yeah.
You know.
So I see ourselves as like, I guess like spokespersons or ministers or people that can speak on behalf of insects, especially when it comes to community building. When we develop in communities, we leave out those insects. We overdevelop. We take away their habitats. The number one loss in bee colonies and insects and animals is lack of habitat. We're doing away with their habitats and placing our own needs above them when we know that we need to work together. So when we're coming in and we're developing cities or urban areas or rural areas, we need to make sure that we include everybody in that conversation.
So what impact have you guys, since you guys have been doing this, I believe it's 2016, since you guys started your first initiatives, how have you seen that that movement kind of grow?
In very many ways. So we've seen many individuals take interest in beekeeping. We also seen many organizations take on similar missions and similar initiatives. We've seen the city of Detroit be more supportive for pollinators, embracing that. But more in addition to that, they've adopted one of our resolutions. We were able to partner with the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy to help introduce a resolution and have the Detroit City Council pass a resolution in 2019 recognizing Detroit as an official bee city. And what this means is that we now have the city municipal support and supporting ethical treatment of pollinators. This means educating residents on the importance of pollinators and not to spray our lawns with chemicals, but also be in compliance with the Exertion Society and not use any chemicals on any of its public or private lands.
Okay, and how has that affected, like, if you know about the soil history, because there's a lot of, history with the soil. Soil in the United States, I know of, has degraded over time. So how has that resolution or over time affected the soil? Because like you said earlier, right, bees, everything is part of ecosystem. And if you don't have solid quality soil or, their ecosystem where they can pollinate.
Right, so chemicals, of course, can affect it has many effects to it, where they can affect us humans, pets, and also insects. But that's what's so great about vacant lots. People have overlooked vacant lots. They're not spraying vacant lots. So for many years, these vacant lots has been creating biodiversity and inclusion. You're seeing their habitats being restored. They're serving as urban jungles, and it's supporting projects like this. So Detroit, in a way, for many years, for I would say over the last decade, has been very instrumental in making Detroit already a bee city.
I think it's amazing how nature, when you leave
things alone, just leave it alone.
Nature just takes its course.
Just leave it alone.
Itself.
Yeah.
I always think about
nature is sustainable.
It's already sustainable. It's self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Life will find a way.
Yeah.
Essentially. So since you mentioned we were talking about the vacant lots and also the beekeeping movement that Andres mentioned earlier, what's the process of transforming the vacant lots into these bee farms?
Wow, that is.
I mean, it's a loaded question, right? But like,
it's
if you break down for people that are really interested and that don't know or want to get into it, what's your process?
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
So what I mean by that is that there was no guideline for us to create a bee farm.
Right.
There was no, you got to do it like this. But there was some kind of guidelines because we had to have some type of guidance to be in compliance with the city. So one of the guidelines we were told is that it had to have a fence around the area or surrounding fence so that bees have to fly at least 6 feet high so that they avoid pedestrians or pets. So when they're foraging, they're not just flying directly into people, and that can prevent, possible issues with a bee running into you, what have you. So that was one of the compliance. And then two, it had to be paired with some local food. Same thing with communities. You don't want to have a community or have a neighborhood and there's like a grocery store about 10 miles away. No one want to live in a community where your grocery store is 10 miles away. Mm-hmm. Same thing for honeybees and insects. They need local food. So you need to have local food paired in that apiary or bee farm, whether it's a small garden or next to a community garden. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what our first step is knowing that we had to have that fence and knowing that they had nearby food, we just trust the process. We listen to our hearts and listen to what our community needed, but more importantly, the thoughts of what the community wanted in the neighborhood as well. So the main thing is they wanted the area cleaned up. They wanted the area to be transformed from blight to beauty, and they also wanted projects that could benefit the next generation, inner city youth. So we were able to create some educational components with the bee farm as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. So specifically in Detroit, what are some examples of like a lot that you guys have here, like that have helped educate the local population as well as abroad?
Wow, so many. Let's start with the first project, which is the East Warren Apiary. We were able to start that project May 23rd of 2017. This was a 10-year-old abandoned vacant lot that most people viewed as an eyesore. With the community support, help with local local organizations, and etc., we were able to transform this space into an educational hub. We hosted well over 800 tours of the space, musical events, the things we want to create things you would never want to see with bees or never thought you compare with bees. So musical events. Honey tasting events, things that you will have your misconceptions like you wouldn't normally see this with bees. We wanted to really break that barrier between people and pollinators. Like I said before, when you thought about beekeeping in rural or urban areas, you would have your bees over here to the right, and then you'll have society and community to the left. We wanted to change that. We wanted to create a space where we can all thrive together and get to know everybody. Yeah. That's what our East Warren Apiary was. In addition to that, you have the Brightmoor Pollinator Habitat, and that's where we transformed a vacant lot into a pollinator habitat. Once again, like Nicole mentioned, the number one decline in pollinators or in bees is a lack of habitat. We gentrified their space. We created homes, highways, roads, freeways, tall buildings, everything to just block them from their natural habitat or prevent them from thriving in their natural habitat. So at this Brightmoor Pollinator Habitat, we installed over 300 perennials. Perennials like Black Eyed Susans, Echinacea, Blazing Star, Asters.
For those who don't know, what are perennials?
Perennials are native wildflowers, or they could be non-native wildflowers that bloom year after year.
Okay. But also the distinction, can you make just a quick distinction between the apiary, like the East Warren, and the pollinator spaces, and maybe some of the differences?
Right. So an apiary is just a place where you keep and house bees. It's a bee yard. It's just a place where you have beehives. Now an educational apiary is a place where you keep and house bees, but it's paired with an educational programming. Mm-hmm. Now, a pollinator habitat is typically just a pollinator habitat. It's an environment where you have things you plant, whether it's fruit trees, whether it's pollinator attracting trees. It's particularly plants that you put there to attract pollinators. So it's a thriving habitat.
Yeah, so plants, flowers, and fruits and vegetables that attract pollinators.
Pollinators.
Yep.
And we're talking about pollinators like ants. Mm-hmm. Flies are pollinators, honeybees, of course, and native bees, butterflies, etc. So it's not just one particular, even wasps. So it's not just one particular type of pollinator, like a honeybee. There's many different type of pollinators out there, even bats.
Oh wow.
What do the wasps? I'm actually very curious what the wasps do as opposed to the honeybees. I know they do different aspects within what they do for the ecosystem, but what do the wasps? People think like yellow jackets or other types of wasps are just a nuisance, as they did with bees before. So with wasps, what just the specific?
Oh man, wasps are scary.
They do quite a few things. They pollinate by accident. So they do visit flowers for their nectar. And while they visit flowers, they may shake a couple seeds around. but they only visit flowers for nectar. Mm-hmm. They also balance out the insect world, so they eat other insects.
So they can be eating the pests that are on the flowers and fruits.
Yeah, like aphids and things like that. And they also eat other beneficial insects too. Yeah. They balance out the insect world.
Okay.
Yeah. So their main diet is to eat other insects, but they also take on nectar. So while they're taking on nectar, they could be taking on another insect that could be damaging that flower. Yep. So it's just like you said, they balance out the insect world.
Okay, so I know we've kind of been talking about beekeeping a lot, but I know that with an organization like Detroit Hives, I imagine there's probably a lot of administrative work. But if you put yourself in the role of a beekeeper, what does that role really entail?
I think that role kind of differs as it relates to an urban beekeeper. And I don't normally like to make those two distinctive names or traits from a beekeeper to an urban beekeeper, but I think it is different because we still have a life. Not to say that beekeepers don't have a life, but we live in a city environment. Yeah. So, you might find us beekeeping by the day and partying by the night. Not to say that rural beekeepers don't do that. It's just that we wear probably multiple hats.
Yeah. You have more connections in the city. I mean, the city is just teeming with.
It's a lot going on. Yeah. There's a lot more things going on.
Yeah. So it's not just going inside the hive and inspecting, but with multiple layers of still going in the hive, maybe still talking to your neighbor or your kids. Or we also do like the educational tours. So when it's time to inspect the hive, we have tours around that time too. So we're like doing two things at once. So we do a lot of educational tours through inviting schools. And it's not just children and youth. Our sites are multi-generational. So we have from 8 to 80, but even younger than that and older than that as well. We get a chance to talk to people from all over the world. We stay in a very popular city that people are excited to come visit. So when we're inspecting hive, we're doing like tours for people who are visiting Detroit from France, from Australia, from
there you go.
A lot of places from around the world who are excited about Detroit's past, but also intrigued about Detroit's present and future. And they want to see what's going on.
They want to see all parts of Detroit.
And all parts of Detroit.
All parts of the area, every spectrum, every corner of the city of Detroit. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
So with us being in the city of Detroit, like I said, we have an array of people from different backgrounds and different countries, but giving them opportunities to go inside of a hive and getting over their fears and working next to bees, and just spreading that education.
Very nice. So operations aside, in regards to obviously spreading, I'm sure you guys get donations. I'm sure you guys get volunteers. Is there other type of funding that you guys get in regards to, as a nonprofit, pushing forward?
Well, most of our funding is done through individual donors.
Okay.
Most of our support is national. We receive national support from all over the world, outside the U.S., in the U.S., and also, of course, local as well. But once again, most of our support is from individual donors.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
It seems like throughout the last years, I know that we talk about the beekeeping movement, but agriculture in general seems to be a big push in the city of Detroit. Do you think that has had any influence in the varying populations with the bees? Do you think that nowadays we will see more bees than we did maybe 5-10 years ago?
I would definitely agree to that, simply because there's more food. If you plant it, they will come.
And with Detroit having so many large spaces of vacant land, yes, you've seen parts of Detroit turn into this urban ag. So with urban ag popping up within the city of Detroit, which was pretty much thriving before we came into the beekeeping space. But now that we put beekeeping on a platform where people are now more comfortable and acceptable of it, now you're seeing a surge of people now going into beekeeping and keeping hives. But also, since the pandemic has given people time to learn new things and discover where their food is coming from, since our generation has been pumped with processed foods. So a lot of us are want to learn where our food comes from, how is it grown, we're concerned about the chemicals that are being sprayed. But since the pandemic, people have time to actually focus on learning new things and wanting to grow gardens and growing their own foods. So yes, there's definitely been a surge in the past couple of years in beekeeping and gardening. So yeah.
And hopefully that leads to a healthier generations. Because
absolutely,
I mean, you look at the back of any ingredient, there's some kind of corn-based sweetener or corn-based. What is it? Protein or you name it. It's in most of our products that we eat.
It's inevitable.
Usually my point of measure for ingredients is the more ingredients there are and the more you have to read, the worse it usually is. You know.
Same.
So in regards to obviously pandemic happened and the bees, they had to keep going, had to keep doing their role. We're in Michigan. Yeah. It's cold for a lot of time of the year.
Yes.
How do the bee populations, adapt or fluctuate with these weather patterns?
They're sustainable. They've been around for over 400 millions of years. Native bees, they're mainly solitary. Okay. They tend to die out during the winter, except for the queen. The queen will create a berry on the ground and hibernate, begin to emerge and lay eggs during the spring. Now with honeybees, once again, they originate from Africa. And through time, they've learned to adapt in different regions. So here in Michigan, where we have colder climates, they create their own heat source, but they regulate the temperature of their hive all year round, not just in the winter. So when it's in the summertime, when it's too hot, they create their own air conditioner, and that's to prevent their hive or their home from getting too overheated to cook or overheat the babies or the eggs inside the hive. When it's too cold, they create their own heating system. And what they do is begin a process of vibrating their wing muscles, which creates friction. And from that friction, they're able to maintain a temperature of 90 to 98 degrees inside their hive. Wow. And they began to rotate to make sure that each worker bee, now it's only worker bees and queen bee inside their hive during the winter. All of us males are kicked out before the winter. And this is because we are not going to vibrate to do the job to keep the hive warm. All we're going to do is pretty much eat up all the honey and try to take up some of that heat the worker bees, the females, are creating. So the female worker bees kick out all the male bees. And of course, we're going to try to come back inside the hive and get a little bit of honey and a little bit of shelter. But they'll drag us out and they'll even bite our wings off or bite out the male wings of the drone bees if need be. And this is to make sure that the hive is sustainable so they can sustain their honey and make sure that it's rationed off correctly and not being overused by drone bees.
Sounds like a pretty good soap opera.
Yeah. So in the winter time, you do have some few threats with raising bees or managing bees. I broke it down just to 3. It's only 3. If you can master these 3, you can be a good sustainable beekeeper. You got to make sure your bees are healthy before going into the winter. So you have to monitor their health in the spring, summer, and fall before going into the winter. The three threats that bees face is moisture, mites, and a lack of food. Moisture, mites, and a lack of food. What we mean by moisture is that you have a cold element outside, and then you have these bees creating so much heat inside this hive that it can create condensation. When it creates that condensation, that water can freeze the bees, and they can die from that. It's not the cold temperature that harms the bees. It just makes them work a little bit harder to create their own heat source. It's the moisture that can kill the bees. So how to mitigate the moisture is you have to properly ventilate the hive. There have to be some type of airflow going in and out that hive. In addition to that, there have to be something to kind of stop the moisture, whether it's in certain additional boxes with wood chips, hay, something to absorb or soak up all that moisture so that it doesn't fall into the bees. Because as they begin to create the heat, the condensation can fall onto the bees. 2 is a lack of food. You got to make sure that you leave at least 80 to 100 pounds of honey inside the hive. Yes, honey is their store of food. They work all spring, summer, fall to make sure that their next generation has something to eat during the winter. A lot of those bees getting the honey right now and never even tried it.
Never.
Not even taste like.
Will they ever?
No. because their lifespan is only 4 to 6 weeks.
Long live the queen.
Yeah. And it takes about 12 bees just to make a little teaspoon of honey.
Yeah, what that goes into.
Yeah.
So that's a lesson to look at. It's like when you're living or when you're preparing a family, you have to think about the next generation. You have to create some type of investment. And that's what honeybees do. They create their investment for the next generation so that the winter bees have enough food to make it over the winter. So they will keep making honey and to make sure they have enough for the winter. But as responsible, sustainable beekeepers, we have to make sure that there's at least 80 to 100 pounds of honey left in those hives. Anything over that, we can and we do take to support our economic mobility, whether it's provide local raw honey for farmers markets, for local retail stores, but also to help sustain our organization financially. The last thing is mites. It's these parasites or any type of threat like yellow jackets or help me out here, beetles, all those type of threats that can harm a colony. So you gotta make sure your hive is free from those type of predators or insects that can harm your colony. But particularly with mice, it's a parasite. It's called the
Varroa destructor.
Varroa destructor. It's like some type of transformer. But it's very detrimental to a honeybee colony. It can destroy a whole colony. It's a small little parasitic mite that can attach to the underbelly, to the top, anywhere onto that honeybee and suck the fat out of the honeybee. And it can weaken the bee's immune system, or it can attach itself to the larva of a honeybee.
Yeah, mostly particularly like the drones. They really like the drones because it takes 24 days for the drones to be born, but they're also the heaviest, so they have more fat to eat on. So right before the nurse worker bees cap off the larvae for the drone bees, they would like to go inside of those cells and feast on them. But when they're born, they come out with deformities, so their wings are deformed, so they're not able to fly and not able to tend to the duties that they need to do with inside of the hive.
So much detail to every single step, and you mentioned the 3. It's just incredible that they know this happens to come all together in cohesive.
Now, mind you,
manner.
Honeybees have been around for over 400 millions of years, and they never had this problem up until the 80s.
Okay, 80s. Wow.
Yeah. So the Varroa mite came over here to the United States from Asia, and then Australia was the last to get Varroa mites in 2006. So any beekeeper, they're always gonna have to deal with mites.
And no beekeeper really knows where they come from.
Who originates from, like how
did they get here?
Yes.
Okay. If you ask me, I think it's man-made.
I
think it's man-made.
Well, we've certainly gone through a lot that people, and I'm sure people that definitely, because you mentioned pretty much the process about beekeeping and the 3 things that a beekeeper should watch out for. What can we expect from Detroit Hives the rest of this year and into 2023, man?
Oh, wow. We're always moving, staying busy as a bee, but what others can expect is definitely volunteer events. Let's talk about our newest project, which is the State Fair in Hoover Pollinator Parkway. We're transforming a 32,800 square foot parking lot to serve as a centralized hub location that benefits, once again, people and pollinators. This particular hub parking lot project is set to break ground this year, and our completion date will be towards the end of this year as well. So people can look out for volunteer dates. They can look out for tons of events and programming at this particular location located within the Osborne community. In addition to that, we're also revitalizing 4 additional spaces. We receive community support from a foundation to revitalize a total of 5 locations, including the State Fair Hoover Pollinator Parkway for this year. So we really have quite a few projects this year that we got to get off the ground. Tons of volunteer projects that we definitely can use for support. And that's keeping us busy for right there. But also National Urban Beekeeping Day. That's something that you got to mark your calendars for, July 19th. We're always going to be celebrating National Urban Beekeepers with a 4-step action plan. Be on the lookout for that, and just stay tuned for what's next for Detroit Hives.
So if people want to find you and volunteer to get involved with your organization, how can they go about doing that?
We welcome everyone to join the Hive. Join the Hive. Follow us on social media at Detroit Hives. Visit our website, DetroitHives.org. Shoot us an email. Give us a call. Just stay on the buzz. Stay on the lookout for our upcoming events.
Real quick, where can people get your honey? You mentioned you guys have local honey. Where can people buy that?
Yeah. People can get our honey in many ways. But let's start with 4 convenient ways. Online. For those persons that are not local, we just had someone order our honey all the way from the Netherlands. So you can order our honey online at DetroitHives.org. You can also visit the Meyer River town located off Jefferson to purchase our deliciously dope Detroit Hives honey. You can visit the
Woodward Corner Market in Royal Oak, Michigan.
And also, if you like to go out to Somerset, stop by the Detroit shop right in Somerset Mall.
On the 3rd floor.
On the 3rd floor.
Next to Macy's.
It's a Detroit shop. There you can also purchase our honey. And then lastly, be on the lookout for local farmers markets. Detroit Hives will be swarming around different local farmers markets, and you can get our local wildflower honey there. And I will make one little note on the type of honey that we do provide. Here in urban cities, you're going to typically have what's called wildflower honey. And this is because we don't have a designated area that has over 5 or 10 acres of one particular crop. You're going to have a variety of many different type of wildflowers, from clover, dandelion, mint, lavender, many different types of blossoms from apple trees, many different types of sources for bees to visit.
Which makes happy and healthy bees.
Which definitely makes happy and healthy bees, because honeybees, their nurse bees, need at least 3 different type of pollen sources to thrive. Bees don't thrive as humans just eating one type of food source every day. So honeybees need to travel and visit many different type of flowers or many different sources of pollen to bring back to their colony so they can thrive. So it makes happier, healthy bees. Same thing, it makes a much tastier honey. You have to look at it like a rainbow of flavors, not just having clover honey or buckwheat honey or orange blossom if you're in different regions. But here in Michigan we have, and here in the urban cities we have what's mostly known as wildflower, in which you have a dominant of mint and clover in that honey. And it has a very unique, distinct taste. In fact, I think Michigan has some of the best honey. And we're just not tooting our horn. Michigan does have the best honey, and we welcome you all to try Michigan's honey. Mostly, in fact, Detroit Hives honey as well.
Well, we're happy to be part of that. We're going to be here in Michigan to be able to try that. Tim, Nicole, we'd love to, talk some more, but this is pretty much the time we have. And anything else, Andres?
We look forward to having you back on our next installment when we check back on you guys later on this year.
Definitely.
And we want to thank you guys again for coming to the show.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Thank you for
time,
having
guys.
us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been sweet.